All right, so we are going to be making our artwork today, starting from the background. And normally we don't really do that a lot. We start with our subject and then we add stuff in the background, but I don't want our backgrounds to be an afterthought. I want you guys to focus on creating a colorful and interesting background to add on to your subject today. So I'm gonna start out with, I think I'm gonna use markers mostly. You guys can use anything you want. I have crayons, colored pencils out. You can use paint. The only thing with paint is, please feel free to use it. Don't let this discourage you from using it. But if you are using paint, you're gonna need to let it dry before you add on your subject, which is totally fine. So I'm just gonna start getting some colors and maybe adding some shapes and coloring them in. And remember how some of the artwork we looked at had words written on it. Some of it has more colorful ones versus ones that are mostly like black and red. And if you are going to think about putting the crown aspect into your artwork, I would also do that for in your background, just so it doesn't get too difficult to put it on there, because if you're doing a yellow crown and you do dark colors for your background, it would be difficult to put it on there. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my crown, even though I've not added my subject yet, and I'm not even sure what my subject is gonna be. But I'm gonna add that crown since it is yellow. And our subjects are going to be black and white, and that is why we're gonna do our background first and our subject on top of it. So there's my crown, and I'm just gonna keep filling in the space. And I'm not necessarily doing scribble scrabble, but I'm also not being super careful about what I'm putting on here. I want it to be more wild, more abstract, more random, and a little bit sharp or edgy, I guess, than normal. And my colors are super, super bright just because of the markers that I'm using are all super, super bright. But if you would like to use darker colors, especially with crayons, you'll be able to get a lot of really dark colors, or with paint, if you have paint, to keep up kind of with the vibe that the artist has when he was creating his backgrounds. A lot more of the blacks and grays and brownish neutral tones that are used in there, with more colorful stuff on top of it. But again, this is totally up to you. This is your artwork. You are creating it however you would like to. And try to fill in all that white space. Not sure if you guys can see from my paper, but there's definitely some little white spaces I want to fill in, so I don't have any on my paper when I'm finished. Definitely feel free to use some mixed media, which is using multiple different types of materials on your paper. So markers, pencils, crayons, paint, anything that you guys have. Also, collage would look really good on here. If you have glue and extra paper, any even like just newspaper or those like ads that you get in the mail, like rip some pieces and add to your paper. I think that would look really good. Some different things that add texture. Be creative, make it interesting, make it look like it has a lot of movement. Mine definitely has a bit of a collage look with these shapes. It also looks a little bit like Henri Matisse because of the colors that I have, I think. There's two in particular that I'm looking at right now that have these super bright, like pastel, almost watercolor looking shades on them that I like a lot, that I'm going with. That I'm inspired by, I should say. His style is definitely more scratchy and rigid than clean. So please do not be afraid of kind of going all over the place with this. Doesn't need to be perfect. Put some emotion into it. And remember to clean up your space when you're done, because you'll see I'm getting marker all over the table right now when I'm doing this. Also, remember to put your lids on your markers. I know you guys are very responsible and are not going to leave markers all over the place without lids on it, but I always want to remind you guys, because especially right now, if you have markers at home, those are your markers that are yours to take care of, to make sure that they stay nice for as long as possible. And if we're not putting the lids on them, they're not going to stay like that. And if it feels like it's drying out, stop using it and go use another color to let the ink kind of go back to the top of it. So you can also store them upside down so the ink is going into the tip if you're able to do that, like kind of like how we had them in little cups in here. I'm definitely going to be working in several different layers today for this. This is my first layer. This is my background. My texture is pretty much similar throughout the whole thing, unless you are using multiple different types of media or paint or collage, you might have a more textured background than mine, which I think will look pretty cool because mine does look a little bit smooth and flat, and that's not really the idea that we're going for. But I'm using the materials that I have, which is markers right now, so that's okay. And different materials are going to be easier for certain things to add on to it. So for example, markers are super flat. It will be pretty easy for me to go in on top of this with anything as long as it's dry. If it's a little bit damp, again, even though it's just markers and not paint, you're gonna need to let it sit for a little bit so you're not like tearing it up. But crayons will go super easy on top of this. Markers will go easy on top of it. Paint, colored pencil, regular pencil will go super easy on top of this. But if you're doing paint, it depends on what type of paint you're using, but the watercolors are super similar to the markers where it'll be pretty easy to add on to it. But if you do your background in crayon, which you are more than welcome to do, you will probably want to go in with crayon for your second layer to do your subject as well, because the markers would not cut through the wax of the crayons very well. And the watercolors would do the same thing, where like how we looked at the watercolor resists before, how crayon keeps the watercolor from getting to the paper basically. So be mindful of that. I'm trying to fill in all the space as much as I can, but I'm still giving it that kind of like scribbly, sharp effect at the end. So make sure your coloring isn't super streaky looking, especially if you're using markers. If you're using something different, you probably won't have trouble with it, but filling in as much of that white space as possible. All right, so I am happy with my background. I filled it in. It's a little edgy, scratchy, kind of messy looking. It's definitely a little bit wet. But I'm gonna go ahead and start working on my subject because I don't want to lose too much time on this. I'm gonna go in and see how well my black marker looks on this. I'm gonna outline my crown. And then I think for my subject, I am going to do a silhouette of a cat. And if you remember from the pictures we were looking at, the silhouette is just the black, kind of the shadow, if it were to cast a shadow. Actually, I'm not sure if I want to do a cat. I think I want to do like an alien type thing. So I'm just gonna like give it some shape, my alien head. And you guys do whatever you want. You don't have to do an animal either. You can do a person, an animal, real or made up animal. Make it exaggerated, make it weird looking, make the arms too small or the head too big. Because this is not really a realistic looking picture. You can do some sort of monster, made up creature, real life creature, anything you want to do. Just make sure you leave room to add. We're gonna add some bones to the inside. Oops, I think I ripped it a little bit. Just be super, super careful if your paper is wet. All right, so I'm happy with that. I'm not sure if I should go in and add the bones right now because I don't want it to rip because it's wet. So I think I'm gonna add some designs to my background. Just some, and see my edges are starting to curl because it's a little bit damp. Adding some stuff in here. You can add lines, shapes, words. He did a lot of different words that he added into his pictures in the background. So anything that's relevant to your picture, I'm gonna put, I don't know, space. Alien. Boom. Just some random stuff, and you can also put your name on there in the background somewhere as kind of making it a part of your artwork versus doing a signature at the bottom. Excuse me. All right, I'm gonna go in and see if I can add my details in my skeleton with my crayon. And be super careful. If you need to let yours sit, please let it sit. But your crayon, oh yeah, it's a little bit wet still. Your crayon should go right on top of whatever it is, your marker that you used for the black. Pencil is also great. Pencil will do the same thing. And obviously, I don't really know what the skeleton looks like on a alien creature, but I'm just gonna give myself artistic freedom and draw it however I feel like drawing it. His arms are wiggly, his fingers are long. And you can go in and do a skull underneath the head, or sometimes he also would do just like a normal face. Whatever you guys want to do is totally fine, but I do want to add some weird teeth because he did a lot of weird teeth things. I want the teeth to be like that. I'm gonna add some big, hollow looking eyes. And I think that I'm happy with that. I definitely need to let it lay flat to dry so it doesn't keep crinkling up like that, but feel free to add as much detail as you would like. You can add more stuff into the background, more lines, more texture, especially if you did marker and you want to add more stuff on top of it. The crayons will pretty much go over anything. Even if it's like a dark color, the crayons can go like on top of the purple pretty easily. So feel free to go in there and add more scribble scrabble type stuff, more texture, layer different stuff on there, make it look a little cryptic, put your emotions into it. Add some collage and some different things on there if you please. Put my name on it. Oh, you can't see that. See if I can do a white on here. I feel like I went going a little bit crazy with the crayon, but I like it. I like the texture that the crayon gives it. So I am happy with that. I am done with it, and if yours does this where it curls up at the ends, more than welcome to put like something flat on top of it, like a textbook or something that kind of will flatten it out and lay it out so it doesn't do that. So it will dry a little bit better and it will dry flat.